My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So I looked up the word earnest. There's a lot in it. Earnest means serious in mind or intention, characterized by sincerity of intention, demanding or receiving serious attention. Thesaurus, serious, close, constant, determined, firm, fixed, grave, intent, resolute, resolved, sincere, solemn, stable, staid, steady, thoughtful, heartfelt, ablaze, ardent, devoted, eager, enthusiastic, fervent, fervid, impassioned, keen, keen as mustard, passionate, purposeful, urgent, vehement, warm, zealous. So zeal, again, the zeal, doing things really keenly, Seriousness, determination, reality, resolution, sincerity, truth. And the autonyms of that, the opposite of it, is flippant, frivolous, insincere, trifling, apathetic, couldn't care less, half-hearted, unconcerned, unenthusiastic, uninterested. That's the opposite of being earnest. Half-hearted, couldn't care less, and uninterested. So you've got your two states of consciousness, and it's called a grungy payoff. A grungy is when you adopt something which is really not very good, but there's a payoff. So the grungy payoff is that if I'm not doing things with zeal, and I can't be bothered, I'm unenthusiastic, then you can't really get on my case. You have to leave me alone because I'm out of it anyway. So that's the grungy payoff. The payoff is you're not held accountable because you're out of it. Called a grungy payoff. So the grungy is the bad thing, and the payoff is what you consider is going to be, you're going to get out of this. Like if you were a victim of something, and then afterwards somebody tries to get on your case, and you say, hold on a second, I'm a victim. My dad hit me on the head with a lollipop when I was 5 years old. Come on, don't get on my case. So that's the grungy payoff. Yeah. Yeah. Well, for him, he's being proactive in his consciousness. And if he's not having to manage, then he has to just practice self-realization, not everybody else realization. So if somebody else isn't behaving in a way which we would consider ideal, then we look at how we're going to respond to that. How do we react to that in a way which doesn't compromise our enthusiasm and our endeavors to practice Krishna consciousness? We can't be reactive in an environment of devotees, because if we are, then it means that our level of enthusiasm will depend upon other people complying with what we feel they should. And if they don't, then we leave ourselves in harm's way. So it's actually a vulnerability. If you're a proactive person, then irrespective of the way other people are conducting themselves, you've already resolved, you're principle orientated, that despite the feelings that are being generated around you, you're going to be enthusiastic, you're going to be zealous, intent. And if other people can't be bothered and they're not interested and they show no attempt to change at all, then that's their problem. If they want to be like that, then okay. We can wish them all the best, but we're not going to get entangled in their silliness. So to some degree, you have to be a little bit callous. Janasangas Chagat Achihara Prayasa Shapajopaniman Utsanas Chatara Tata Kama Pavata Sangha Chagat. You have to renounce the Sangha. So if the association is not good, then you look to those that you want to follow and you follow their example. And if other people don't want to follow that example, okay. Well, that's between you and Krishna, between you and Prabhupada, between you and your spiritual master, Especially if when the devotee spiritual master is there, they don't change, they won't even put on a show, then it's like, okay, that's not within my jurisdiction to do anything about. And they will self-destruct in due course of time. I've seen it so many times. You can only go so long and not be bothered before you do get bothered, one way or the other. So yeah, either zealous or casual. The choice is yours. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto. This is chapter 15, instructions for those human beings who are civilized. There's not many of them. Civilized human beings are following the 4 regs. Anyway, so we're on text 23. Anvikshikya shoka moho. Anvikshikya shoka moho. Dambam mahad upasaya. Dambam mahad upasaya. Yogantarayan Mona Yogantarayan Monena. Monena. Hingsam Kamadi Anihaya. Himsam Kamadyanihaya. Jayananda, Haribol. Anvikshika Shokamoho Dambam Mahadupasaya Yogantarayan Monena Sankamadyanihaya Anvikshika Shokamoho Dambam Mahadupasaya Yogantarayan Monena Hingsankamadyanihaya. Bolo. Shokamoho. Dambam Mahadupasaya Yugantarayan Monena Himsankamadyanihaya. Anvikshika Shokamoho Dambam Mahadupasaya Yugantarayan Monena Himsankamadyanihaya. Avikshika Shokamoho Dambam Mahadupasaya Yugantarayana Monena Himsankamadyanihaya. Anvikshaya. By deliberation upon material and spiritual subject matters. Shoka, lamentation. Moho, and delusion. Dambam, false pride. Mahat, a Vaishnav. Upasaya, by serving. Yoga antarayan, obstacles on the path of yoga. Monena, by silence. Himsam, envy. Kama adi, for sense gratification. Anihaya, without endeavor. So it's interesting, Dambo Bapana, Dambo Vapana, Dambo Vipana, Dambo Vipanapas. It's in the Bhagavad Gita. Anyone know that one? Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, and harshness. Dambo, Dambo. And that word comes up. Dambo. Dambo Bhimanas Chak. Dambo. This is what happens when you get old. Dambo. We go to Bhagavad Gita here, haven't we? Chapter 16. Krishna says, so it's a demoniac quality. And I just read Chaitanya Chan was saying the reason why, because Krishna isn't asked in chapter 16 any questions, he just launches in straight away. He's just given description of the tree. And he's come from the bottom of the tree to the top of the tree. So the tree that's furthest away from the root, that's the most demoniac. So then he goes into 16th chapter, he explains the two extreme natures. Dambo. Text 4, yeah. Dambo darpo vimanas cha kroda parusham evacha agyanam chabitatajya pata sampadam asuram. Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to the demonic nature. So Damba and Darpa, pride and arrogance. Okay. So I'll just read the purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki. Oh, sorry, read the translation. By discussing spiritual knowledge, one can conquer lamentation and illusion. By serving a great devotee, one can become prideless. By keeping silent, one can avoid obstacles on the path of mystic yoga. And simply by stopping sense gratification, one can conquer envy. Responsibly, please. By discussing spiritual knowledge, one can conquer lamentation and illusion. By serving a great devotee, one can become prideless. By keeping silent, one can avoid obstacles on the path of mystic yoga. And simply by stopping sense gratification, one can conquer envy. So generally when there's a funeral and people are suffering from lamentation, instead of sitting down and discussing spiritual knowledge, they all get drunk. But by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, if one's son has died, one may certainly be affected by lamentation and illusion and cry for the dead son. But one may overcome lamentation and illusion by considering the verses of Bhagavad Gita. Jitasya hi dhruvo mityo, dhruvam janma mitasya cha. As the soul transmigrates, one who has taken birth must give up the present body, and then he must certainly accept another body. There should be no cause for lamentation. Therefore, Lord Krishna says, Dhiras tatra muyati. One who is dhira or sober, who is learned in philosophy and established in knowledge, cannot be unhappy over the transmigration of the soul. Om Agyanatamarandashaganandina Shalakaya Chakshamalitam Jaina Tasma Shigurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhastam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikapa Trubhischa, Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha, Paritnam, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. So very simple. Any questions?
How can we encourage others to point out our defects and help us to progress if maybe we might seem unapproachable at times in these things? How can we encourage others to help us move forward?
Well, yeah, that's a nice question. Everyone get the question? How do we encourage feedback? So, interestingly enough, there's three different types of feedback. Feedback from the Kanishta, feedback from the Majjhima, feedback from the Uttama Adhikari. You get 3 different types of. So you may do the same thing in the temple room, and one devotee will say one thing to you, another devotee will point out the same thing but in a different way, and then the Uttama will explain it in such a way that you don't feel that the person is trying to bring you down. His heart is completely devoid of the propensity to criticize others. You immediately feel that he's doing this for your own well-being, and then it's easy to accept. Because if you're quite advanced, then whoever tells you, you'll be able to accept it. But if you're not so advanced, then it'll have to be really sugar-coated, or you'll get upset because you have such a massive false ego. So as we develop loving relationships with devotees, the reason for developing those loving relationships isn't so that every time they see you, they pat you on the head and say, "You're such a lovely devotee. Can I give you a hug? Here's a sweet bowl." The reason why we're developing those loving relationships is so that when we do get into Maya, we have somebody that we can trust that will be able to tell us that we're in Maya and what we need to do to get out of it. So that's like a very high level of accountability, that you have these open-hearted relationships where you're transparent. There's nothing being held back. You're completely 100% honest. But you can't do that with a Kanishta. If you do that with a Kanishta, then they could destroy you. They could put it on Facebook or make a joke of it or really make you feel discouraged, whereas an Uttama wouldn't do that. And the Majjhima Adhikari, he is at least able to appreciate, and Majjhima Adhikari can associate nicely with devotees. He's steady in his own devotional service. And if you get feedback from a Majjhima Adhikari, it'll be more helpful than Kanishta. So the challenge is, in ISKCON, when you join ISKCON, you have a certain amount of time when you're enthusiastic no matter what, because it's so novel, everything's great, and that'll last for a year or two. And then in that time, the challenge is, can you establish a deep enough relationship with somebody so that you can get the feedback that you need when you need it? If you can do that, then, because we definitely all will run into times when we don't feel very enthusiastic and we feel like leaving the association of the devotees. Just like right now, if we were all in our own flats at home right now and there was no other devotees there and you're just in your flat right now and you felt a bit sleepy, then you would just go and flake out. Your bed is there, the fridge is there, it's full of sweet balls, But in the association of devotees, you're forced to comply with a certain standard, even if it's just out of courtesy, even if it's just because you're carrying the burden of you don't want to just go off and go to bed now because everyone will think, well, he's really out of it, he can't even get it together for the morning program. So at least just for your false ego, But if you do find a particular devotee and you really have faith in him and you can be really transparent with him, then you say, Prabhu, I'm struggling with this or that. Can you give me some feedback, And then the devotee will give you constructive criticism. Constructive, something which is going to be helpful for you, That you go away and you feel enlivened and enriched by that. And you're able to do your service better. And then you experience all the benefits of doing that. It's Guyam Akiti Prichiti, the 6 living exchanges. So Guyam is a secret, Akiti Prichiti. So you open up your heart, and that devotee also opens up his heart.
Yes, something came up the other day, and it was to do with offences, to do with seva and to do with being in the temple. And it was mentioned that, these offences might not affect the offender so much as it might affect those who are responsible for the goings-on within the temple. They would take the reaction for that. Yeah. I just wonder if that's the case. So if you're committing offences and other people are going to suffer for these offences, should that not encourage us to try and buck up our ideas or something? Could you comment on that?
Yeah, there's two approaches to the temple environment. Everyone awake now? That was just to wake everyone up. Right? There's two approaches to the temple environment. One is reactive and the other is proactive. So Srila Prabhupada, whenever he was answering letters, if the devotee was saying, oh, the temple president is smoking cigars and he's never there, and I don't even think he's chanting his rounds, and Prabhupada would always say, okay, so what are you going to do to help? What are you going to do to make his job easier? You know? So it was very proactive. Not long now, only the 23 minutes and 20 seconds before Prashad. So Prabhupada would just encourage in his letters, okay, so what are you going to do then? How are you going to improve and increase your service and your assistance to help this other devotee? So that way it's safe, you know. Otherwise, in the neophyte stage, then we're always fighting about something, you know, there's always something not right with somebody else. But because of that, we take our eye off the ball of ourselves, you know. We have to look at ourselves. Am I enthusiastic today? Am I doing this with zeal? Or am I completely covered in can't be botheredness and uninterestedness? And if I am, then okay, so I've got enough on my plate to deal with without worrying about anybody else, you know. It's like everyone's drowning in the river, and you see somebody really drowning in the river, and you're drowning as well, and you become so preoccupied with how much he's drowning, you go over and get a bit involved, and you start going under with him, you know. So Prabhupada said, the highest principle is to save yourself. Get yourself on the bank of Nishta, become steady, and then you can throw a rope out to loads of people and help them, you know, but not until you're on the bank. Once you're on the bank. So your main objective is, how can I get out free to some degree from the influence of the modes of material nature? Our first one is ignorance, and then we get from ignorance to goodness through the mode of passion, through working really hard, and then we come into the mode of goodness. But you may think, well, the mode of passion looks like a lot of hard work. Can I just go from the mode of ignorance to the mode of goodness? I'm going to do a shortcut here. I'm going to nip through to the mode of goodness from the mode of ignorance. But what happens is if you try and go from the mode of ignorance to the mode of goodness, usually you just fall asleep, even if you sit really neat. Actually, there's three things in japa: posture, prayer, and pronunciation. So if in japa you're sitting really comfortably, then it means you're not being attentive to the holy name. Because if somebody comes into your office and he's really upset about something, and you're sitting there like, what seems to be the problem? And the person immediately feels like you're not concerned. Whereas if you sit on the edge of your seat and say, what seems to be the problem? So your posture when you're chanting, is it one where you're trying to be comfortable? Or is it one where you're trying to be attentive? Which would, actually, your posture would be uncomfortable. You know, if you're sitting. I once did when I was quite sick, I went to an Ayurvedic clinic, Sri Maharaj mentioned to go to it, you know. And one thing the guy said, which really struck me, he said, your body is, the backbone is like the trunk of the tree, and everything coming out of the backbone is what the body's health depends upon. So if your backbone is good, the whole body is good. And he said, one of the best things you can do for your backbone, he said, because the backbone is always under stress, it's always being contorted in some way or another. He says, but if you go up to a wall, you go against the wall, and you put your head in like that, that's the only time the backbone is relaxed. And he said, and if you do that every day, your health will be good, because you're looking after the backbone. So if you're doing that in japa, you can't fall asleep like that. And then you can be attentive. You know? You've got to be a little bit uncomfortable, but you're okay, you're prepared to pay that price. Whereas if you look for comfort, comfort will lead to more discomfort later on. Whereas if you accept some discomfort now, later on you'll be comfortable, because your japa will be good, your attention will be good, your ability to hear will be good. Krishna says, Machita Sarvadagani, everything, you'll be okay with everything if you can just hear me. But if you don't hear your japa, because me, Krishna, the me that Krishna's meaning in Kali Yuga is the holy name. So if you can't hear, if you can't hear Harinam, then you can't think of Krishna, you can't be conscious of Krishna. That's basically what it is. And he says, if you act out of false ego, not hearing me, you'll be lost. So normally, you know, when you're in an ocean and someone throws you a rope, you're holding onto the rope, and then the person may say to you, okay, we're having a job just getting you in right now out of the sea, but hold on to the rope. If you don't hold onto the rope, there's nothing I can do. So for us, in the beginning, that rope that we're holding onto is the holy name. And if we don't hear it, if we're not attentive, then we're finished. Vinankshyasi. Nasroshasi, Vinankshyasi. Shroshasi is to hear, and Nasroshasi. If you don't hear, we're finished. That's the rope. Prabhupada's came and he's given us everything. He's bent over backwards. He's put it on a golden plate. Everything. But you've just got to hold on to the rope. You've got to hear. If you don't hear, then you won't be here.
Hearing can also mean reading, and
Hearing can mean
hearing can also mean reading. So
reading, yeah.
And we read in some of these books different qualities of the names and potencies of the name. So while we're hearing, should we meditate on these at the same time?
Yeah.
Can we hear just in our head? Is it necessarily dependent on our pronunciation being perfect? Maybe we might have a problem with our mouth or something. Or
Just like when the gopis were running to Krishna, they were in disarray, but they were so earnestly keen and zealous to go to Krishna. That was their main qualification. They weren't worrying whether they had both hearings, and because they had such a strong desire to contact with Krishna, it overrid every other consideration. So that's that intense desire and that zeal to want to approach. And the reading is interesting, because if you're actually reading properly, then that will bear the fruit in an intense desire to hear the name. And we were doing Harinam Chintami last night. Everyone should read the last few pages of it. It's just concentrated nectar, So Haridas Thakur is saying, when you're chanting the name, you should be remembering the glories of the name and the meaning of the name at the same time. So you've got Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Vishnu Smaranam. So there's three things going on when you're chanting. And the first thing you're doing is your kirtan, because there's nothing to hear unless you're doing the kirtan. So the first thing is what's going on in the mouth, what's coming out the mouth. Then once it comes out the mouth, then it goes in the ear. And then when it goes in the ear, what's happening in the heart? What are you remembering? So chanting, hearing, and remembering, three things need to be going on whilst you're chanting. Then you can capture Krishna. And there's a very, very slight difference, actually. Can anyone tell me what's the difference between chanting and you're trying to control your mind, and chanting and you're trying to control Krishna? What would you say, Jayananda? What's the difference between trying to control your mind and trying to control Krishna? What's the difference? What's that? Good question. Anyone know? Anyone want to attempt? What is the difference? Someone's controlling their mind and someone's controlling Krishna. Or trying to, you can't control Krishna, but they're trying to.
Well, when you try to control your mind, you kind of you might be on a mundane platform, but when you're trying to control Krishna, you're thinking about Krishna all the time.
Yeah.
It's said that Krishna is controlled by love. So if we're giving Krishna our full love and attention, then that is us trying to control him.
And what's the difference between that and controlling the mind.
Well, if you're trying to control the mind, it's like you're artificially trying to stop things coming up in your mind. You're trying to, hold back from indulging in thoughts and things like that.
What if you're trying to control your mind to please Krishna? You're doing it as an offering. You're saying to the holy name, please, I'm putting my mind forward for you to dance upon. Please, so what happens is the ego changes. Instead of you chanting the holy name is chanting you. The holy name becomes the active principle. So instead of you, I'm the doer, I'm going to get this mantra, I'm going to control Hare Krishna, I'm going to get Krishna, Krishna. I just had that Krishna, I'm going to capture Krishna, Hare Krishna. I've got Krishna. I'm going to control Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Whereas you allow the mantra to take over, and then you're offering, like oblations, you're offering your consciousness to the name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Holy name is going to take over, it's going to dance on your tongue. You're offering your mind like an oblation of ghee unto the yajna, unto the fire of the holy name, the sacrificial fire. In Kali Yuga, the sacrificial fire is the vibration of the Maha Mantra. In the Satya Yuga, it was Treta Yuga, it was the flame. They would offer the ghee into the flame. But because in Kali Yuga, nobody can even get the right paraphernalia or the mantras, the sacrificial fire has become the sound vibration of the Maha Mantra, and the oblations are your consciousness, your offering, your attention. So that fire is burning independently of you. Whereas you can get so caught up in trying to control Krishna that it's like you're the doer and you're making Krishna your servant. Come on, I want to chant this name because I want to be blissful. I want to be free of any sinful reactions. I want things to be easy for me. I want to be liberated. I want to be free of all hassle. And I'm going to use this name like a mechanism. I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to be able to control it. And then from that name, I'll get freedom from reaction. I'll get all my material desires fulfilled. I'll be liberated, I'll be free of all anxiety. So controlling Krishna is different than controlling the mind. And if Krishna sees, wow, he's really trying to control his mind, I'm so happy with this, I'm going to help him, then Krishna becomes pleased. That's how we show our love for Krishna, by earnestly controlling the mind. Not letting the mind wander and pulling it back all the time for Krishna's pleasure. And because Kali Yuga, it's so difficult to do that. So if you're doing it, it's like the ultimate sacrifice to control your mind. And when the mind is controlled, it becomes a friend. So if you listen to what the mind says to you, sometimes it's not a friend. Some of the things the mind will say, it's like, you can turn around and say to us, hold on a second, why are you speaking like this? Sorry, I don't want to listen to this, Unless you're going to be a friendly mind, then just be quiet, I don't want to listen. There was one man, he was doing this talk on Instagram, and his son died when he was 19 and a half years old, and his father drove to the wrong hospital. If he'd have driven to the other hospital, his son would have still been alive, but he drove to the wrong one. So his son died, and his mind said to him 3,700 times, you killed your son because you drove him to the wrong hospital. So after he'd heard it that many times, he turned around one day and he said, okay. Because he said, the man kept saying, your son's died, and he turned around and he said, no, my son's lived. My son lived for 19 and a half years, and they were the best years of my life, and he made a wonderful contribution. And from now on, I want you to either say helpful things or joyful things, otherwise I don't want to hear it. And then he went on to become very productive and very helpful, whereas he could have just stayed crippled by that all his life and never pushed through it, So, and your mind You know, whether it's your son dying, or it's a car you crashed, or a relationship you messed up, or a law that you break. The mind's got loads of things it can bring up, you know, in a very unfriendly, nasty way. And if you know, the funny thing with the mind, you know, if you just keep saying to it, oh yeah, okay, so what next then? You know what the mind eventually says? You know what the final thing is on the contract with the mind, you know, where you're supposed to sign it and follow it. You know what the very final last line of the contract is? So therefore you must kill yourself. Because you're a waste of space, you killed your son, you ruined your relationship, you lost the mortgage on the house, you got kicked out of here, you got in trouble with this. And then the very last line is, and therefore you should kill yourself. That's the last line for the mind. That's not a friend, you see. So for the mind's own sake, because the mind gets killed as well, so it's not going to do the mind any good, is it? So for the mind's own sake and for yours, hold on a second, sorry. Is that going to be useful or is it joyful? Okay, then we don't want to hear it.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. This is very illuminating today. I'm enjoying it thoroughly, getting the benefit of your knowledge and wisdom. So the mind is said to be the mouthpiece of Maya. So does that mean that we are the pure awareness, and the things that are entering into our awareness, could they be external? Could this be, rather than emanating from ourselves, could this be this personality that's actually working to distract us and cause us harm? So therefore, like, we wouldn't actually kill the mind because the mind is this external thing, just a thing I'm interested in.
Well, actually, the far out thing is the mind's not really that much of a problem. The mind's in the mode of goodness. The false ego is in the mode of passion. The intelligence is in the mode of passion. And the false ego is in the mode of ignorance. And it's the false ego that causes all the problems. The mind is like really dozy. If your mind's ever coming up with something, oh, I don't want to do this today, I don't want to do this today, you can just say to the mind, well, I'll tell you what, if we go out today on Sankirtan, I'll buy you an ice cream in an hour with a cherry on top and a 99 flake. And the mind's like, really? Yeah. Okay, then. And you're like, the mind doesn't even know that I'm tricking it here, and it's just going to go along with it. The mind is really dozy, you know. Then the intelligence is the schema. But the false ego comes in and says, did you see the way he looked at you yesterday? And he slopped all that all over your kirta. You did that on purpose. You know, we need to do something about this. Let's get the intelligence in. So the intelligence is working out a missile that's going to fire through the Prashadam hall at 8:30 tomorrow when he's 7, straight between his eyes. And in the mind's, what's happening, guys? We're just designing a missile to kill the Prashadam Seva. Oh, okay then. What do you need from me? We'll need to go down to Tesco's and get some explosive, whatever. So then the mind just tanks along. The mind's like really dozy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur compared the mind to a cow. He said that when you go into a field, all your thoughts are like different cows. And all you have to do is say, hey, Kana is in this field. Hey, yeah, we're going into this field. You as well, everyone, the program, we're going to the field. We're going to graze with Kana. We're going to go for a walk with him while we're chanting our japa. Everybody. And the mind's like, oh, okay, then sorry. No, just walk over. No problem. There you go, your different thoughts that are wandering around like a herd of cows. But the false ego causes the problems. Who does he think he is? I mean, doesn't he understand? I mean, I've been in the movement 33 minutes longer than him. Who does he think he is? This is an outrage. And then everything else gets involved. And Prabhupada said, the false ego is dissolved by the sound vibration of the Maha Mantra. So it's like the false ego steps in on the scene and you just throw this bucket of acid in his face and it just starts dissolving. It's like if you ever chant extra rounds, you ever chant 64 rounds, and the false ego goes to say something, it's normally quite loud, the false ego. Who does he think he is? After 64 rounds, it's like, who does he think he is? Sorry? Oh, sorry. No, I didn't. Sorry, I didn't mean anything. Sorry, didn't say anything. Okay, well, shut up. Okay, sorry. That's what the false ego is like when you've like hammered it, you know. That's why Lord Chaitanya, he recommended a lack of holy names. We're supposed to do 64. That's when things go normal, when you've done 64 rounds. Everything's quite easy, you know. But because we don't have such a taste and there's so many things to do and we're quite passionate, then we get on with doing it, but we try to at least do 16 good rounds and then make enthusiastic service in between, But ideally, if you ever do get a chance to chant 64, you'll say, wow, it's so easy to follow the principles. It's so easy to learn slokas. It's so easy to absorb in the philosophy and the Leela, and everything's great. I feel squeaky clean. I'm great, That's the ideal. Because the false ego's just been like mashed. It's just been like smashed into practically oblivion, There's not much left in it after that. And sometimes if you're just doing 16 every day, you can start thinking, I don't know if this really works, this Hare Krishna. I'm not sure if it does really work, But if you, and then the tendency is to think, maybe I should reduce, but the solution is always to increase, which is very counterintuitive for the mind. You chant more, then it works better. It becomes more powerful. And it's actually supposed to be incessant chanting. So even when the hands are off the beads, the holy name should be trickling through the throat all the time. Hare Krishna. Even though it's not making a sound, it's still going on. Incessant. It's the incessant chanting in Kali Yuga that purchases Krishna, not the 16 can't be bothered rounds, wish they were over, and when's Prashadam. That's not it's not gonna conquer Krishna. Dragging your feet, can't be bothered, uninterested. That's not going to impress Krishna, Because if you're not really interested in Krishna, then after a while Krishna's not really interested in you. That's why he's made the material world for people that are uninterested. Okay, well, go and do something else, then go and sniff around the material energy and try and get interested in that. But you can't find shelter in the material energy because you're eternal and the material energy is temporary. All you can get is an illusion of shelter. It's like having an umbrella, and when you go like that, all the spines come out, but there's no fabric in between. And it's raining like anything, and everyone's going around with their umbrellas up. It doesn't have any effect. We take the sense gratification as a shelter, but it doesn't offer any shelter. Any questions or comments?
What's the best way to discuss spiritual knowledge?
What's the
Best way to discuss spiritual knowledge?
The best way to discuss spiritual knowledge? In terms of tattva or rasa? Oh yeah, spiritual knowledge, by discussing spiritual knowledge. And what's the best way to discuss it? What do you think? What do you think the best way is to discuss it? Well, obviously to discuss it with some interest and some enthusiasm is very helpful. Yeah, and who knows the seed verse in the Gita which refers to that? There's Tesham Sadhata Yuktanam Tesham Ivanakam Partinam Aham Savasya Prabhavo, and the one that I always forget, my devotees Ramanticha, the ones that they derive great bliss from inquiring about me to each other. You know that one? So if you want to find out Jayananda Prabhu, then if you go to chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita, and it's text 9. Machita Makata Prana Bojanta Parasparam Katayantas Chimam Nityam Tushanti Cha Ramanti Cha. Ramanti is like satisfaction. Tushanti is satisfaction. Tushanti, they become pleased, and Ramanti enjoy transcendental bliss. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So if you're discussing spiritual knowledge with a devotee who's fully devoted and is deriving great satisfaction and bliss, then automatically you'll experience that as well, you know. These books by Chaitanya Charan, you can see he's really relishing the Bhagavad Gita, and he goes through it chapter by chapter and really helps you to understand it, you know. So by his mercy, we're able to go deeper into it. But there needs to be a certain amount of humility there. That, I believe that there are other devotees that understand spiritual knowledge much better than I do. And so therefore I'd like to hear from them and converse with them. But if our false ego is like, I don't listen to him because, he was rude to me in 1957. So I'm not bothered what he's got to say. Then you're not able to really enter into. So yeah, discussing spiritual knowledge means having living relationships with devotees, relationships based upon respect and humility. And then the living exchange can take place. Discussing spiritual knowledge. So it means to converse and to enlighten. That's what discussing means, conversing and enlightening. And it's interesting, when you're enlightened, also the burden is lightened. So if you're bearing a very heavy burden of uninterest and an enthusiasm, it's a heavy burden to carry. And then by conversing with somebody, they lighten that load. You become enlightened. Iskon Gurvind ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shishikoda Nitai Maya Poshashi ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Haribo.
His Grace Adhoksaja Krishna Das ki.
All of you.